Okay, there we go. All right, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Not that. Hold on a second. Okay, so welcome to our May general meeting, the last one through of the year. So very exciting. We'll start with our land acknowledgement. As we gather for this meeting, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We wish to acknowledge this land on which this SPC meeting is taking place. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Hohokam, the Acoma O'odham, and most recently, the Salt River Pima Indian community. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Maricopa, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. So here is our agenda tonight. We have some executive board updates, any SPC representatives. If anyone would like to make an announcement of any sort, there's time for that. And then we will have our extended Q&A with Dr. Menzel. So questions have been submitted in advance. And then once we get through those, we'll take ones from the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that forum because I know some people have already continued to put them in there just up till right now. So, but we'll have 30 minutes with him, so we should be able to get through everyone's questions. And then we have Dr. Kim Guerin here with us on ways to keep our kids engaged over the summer. So for our updates, so our executive board has been finalized for next year. Thank you to everyone who voted. The voting body is our SPC representatives and our current executive board. So thank you to everyone who voted. President is myself, Emmy Cardella. Co-secretaries are Cindy Kravchuk and Jane Trapp, and our treasurer is Amanda Ray. Before I go to the next slide, I'll point out this link, the tiny URL, has all of the bios to read the submission from each of the board members. And my slides are out of order, so hold on, here we go. And then as the vice presidents of school representatives are Allison Robbins and Kathy Samuels. And then our VPs for outreach are Tracy Davis and Alexandra Young. For programming, we have Lulu Faraj and Erica Flores. For VP of Advocacy, Tina Drews. And for communications, Brad Duell and Deborah Tate. And then I wanted to say thank you to our outgoing board. Fortunately, a few are staying on, but thank you so much, everyone, for this year. I wish I didn't even get to meet some of them in person this entire year. So part of this list I have never even seen in person, but we had a great year nonetheless. So we have Jill Lassen, Cindy Kravchuk, Megan Prince, Brad Duell, Allie Robbins, Rose Munez, Holly Davidson, Rachel Feitlinger, Kira King, Lula Faraj, and Jill Mullen. So thank you very much, everybody. All right. And then also thank you to our election committee who vetted all the nominees, walked them through the process. They put the ballot together, ran the voting for the past 2 weeks, and that's Holly Davidson chaired that. And then she was joined by Andrea Augustine and Brian King. So thank you to all of them for doing that for us. And with that, I have SPC representatives. So if there is anyone who has an announcement that they would like to make, feel free to just chime in. No takers. Okay, then we will move on. I believe our next thing is, right into our Q&A. So like Jill was able to join us in time. So thank you, Jill. She got hung up a little bit, so just in the nick of time. So Jill, can start with all the questions that were previously submitted, and then feel free to put some in the chat and we'll try to compile those as we go along.
Okay. Thank you, Emmy. And if it wasn't already said, thank you for your leadership this year, Emmy. You have been a fantastic president, and we were very lucky to have you this year. So, thank you, our fearless leader. Dr. Menzel, thank you for joining us again. It is nice to talk to you. So I am going to jump right in. The first question, is iReady a required part of the math curriculum? I've heard many complaints around it this year, not only from my own children, but from others as well as teachers. If it is required, is there any chance of it being reviewed in the future?
So iReady has been in use in a number of our buildings. I know that Dr. Sackos and Dr. Guerin are here. My understanding is it's not required. We have many principals that wanted to use it. We were working to identify the value and benefit of iReady, and many principals were sharing their stories about the value that it provided in terms of informing instruction and instructional practices. But if Dr. Sackos or Dr. Guerin want to speak about how we frame that for next year, I would turn the microphone over to one of you.
Right now, all the middle schools are using it, but they can use it in different ways. So all students can take assessments, and then students that are struggling can be assigned intervention. So even though all middle schools are using it, it doesn't mean that every day everyone is engaged. It can be used as an intervention program, a support program. It shouldn't be standalone. It should be with teacher support, with teacher engagement and instruction. And what it is it's an intuitive program. So if you are struggling in a particular area, the program will identify it and then give you a practice activity related to that. And once the student gets the concept, it will move them on to the next one. Dr. Sackos, do you want to add anything to that? There's a lot of elementary schools that are starting to use it because teachers are really seeing good results. So it is spreading. So many times we find when teachers tell other teachers when things are working, we find it going throughout the district. But I also want to say that this year was different. So things that could be super engaging and students could really enjoy them, they're not enjoying them this year. My son was home, couldn't stand chemistry, finally got in and got to do a lab experiment, loves chemistry now. So there has to be a little bit of an asterisk with all programs this year. Dr. Sackos, did I miss anything?
No, that was well stated. The only thing I would add is, and I'm still trying to figure out how to turn on my camera here. The only thing I would add is that principals really valued the program in terms of the.
Yeah, your computer muted on you again, Dr. Sackos.
Yeah, we lost you.
This happens to her from time to time.
Yeah, she's not showing as muted, so something went very wrong.
Don't tell her I'm muting her, okay?
Well, we can always come back to her if she has anything
Sure.
in addition to add to the iReady question. Thank you both.
And let me just add on the end that we're always reviewing our assessment practices to determine what's working, what's not, how we can improve. Assessment shouldn't be done just for the sake of assessment. They really need to be carefully designed in order to inform instruction and help ensure that our students are mastering the content. So that's an ongoing process with respect to the last part of the question.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, with the extremely low transmission rate of COVID, as well as the death rate in children, would you be able to please explain why they're still wearing masks and when they will be able to return to school maskless?
So the first part of the answer is that public health officials, including the Center for Disease Control, recommends that for indoor individuals, particularly when you can't have the spacing, but indoors in general, with groups of people, that masks still be required. We've got substantial community transmission, And so not only SUSD, but all of the schools in the North Valley Education Consortium chose to maintain the mask mandate through the end of this school year. As you all know, we've got 11 school days left, and then this will be done. So then the question really becomes, what about next year, and where are we heading? I know many of people have pointed out that Paradise Valley's already come out with their statement in terms of what they're planning for. Scottsdale is planning for the same thing. Our plan would be to return with a mask option, but just like Paradise Valley, that has to be qualified in the sense that if we have an India-like situation and hospitals are overrun, we're gonna have to make decisions just before school starts. So the plan, given everything that we know today, is to return to school with masks being optional. There may be some children and some families for various reasons who choose to wear masks. There may be some teachers who choose to wear masks. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to recognize in this next phase of the pandemic recovery, is that mask will be optional. And that's the hope. There may be a requirement for mask if we saw a spike in cases. So one school district in Arizona, Prescott, removed the mask mandate. They saw a significant spike in cases and had to quarantine 180 kids, and they reinstated the mask mandate. We hope never to have to do that. Our goal all along has been to take the incremental steps necessary so we never had to reverse course. But from what we see now and the things that we're experiencing, even with the removal of the mask requirement at recess and PE that's outdoor, we're not seeing additional evidence of spread. We're also going to be able to learn from the school districts that removed the mask mandate and made it optional for the balance of this year. All of that information helps give us greater degrees of confidence, but the plan is to start the fall without a mask mandate, barring something unforeseen.
Thank you. What are the top goals for the district in the next year? It does not specify in what area. So any goals you want to share, any top goals you have for the district?
So I would start by saying we're still in the middle of our strategic planning process, and that when it's completed, we'll identify priority goals and hopefully clearly articulate the future direction for the district. But shorter term, the top goal is to really start the year in a way that brings our community back together, that allows us to return to some sense of normal as best we can, recognizing that there are some things in this environment that may be permanent changes, but I think there's a longing on the part of virtually everyone to get back to normal. And so for me on the front end is to put things in place to be prepared to meet the needs of our students where they are. One of the things that we know is that the pandemic has impacted our kids and even our staff differentially. There are some students who have lost family members, whose family members may have lost jobs. They may have had to move houses. You know, there are a lot of disruptive things that might have happened in some families, and other families maybe didn't have that same experience. The ability to participate in person versus online and where they are academically. We as a district are committed to meeting the needs of our students where they are. So we understand that the pandemic had differential impact on our students. We want to understand where they are. We're going to provide summer programming, summer boost, and Kim can talk more, Dr. Guerin can talk more specifically about any questions on that, but we're working to help ensure that our students are on track, and we'll be there to support them, not only academically, but also social and emotional development. Because again, that the isolation that many have experienced, some of the other concerns, I think are going to be really important as we head into the new school year.
Okay, thanks. And we have a parent to add on to that question who wants to know if SUSD is tracking members of the strategic design team that could possibly be leaving the district next year, and will you be adding new parent volunteers to the team?
So I do believe that there may be some shifting of people who are participating. We are tracking that. We have a three-phase process. Phase one is nearing completion, and that's the vision, mission, and value component of the strategic plan. That will be completed with governing board approval by June 22nd. And then we'll shift into phase two, where we really sink our teeth into what the strategic goals should be, what the objectives are under those goals, and then what are the key performance indicators. We'll be taking a look at committee membership. We'll be asking members that are currently part of phase one, do they have the time and interest to continue? We'll then ask the question, once we get a sense of, have people moved on? So if someone's representing a particular group, say a parent group, and they're no longer a parent in the district, we'll probably want to make a move to invite people to apply and replace those vacancies. We were intentional in terms of ensuring we had parent and teacher coverage and representation from all 5 of our learning communities. And we'll want to be sure that we have that diverse representation on a go-forward basis.
There's going to be a lot of change starting in the fall for everyone. Is it possible for every school to have an SEL coach or possibly a social worker and an ad hoc committee in each school comprised of parents, teachers, admins, and in the high school students that address the trauma of this past year and the lingering effects on positive academic and social achievement? That was a mouthful. I apologize. If you need me to repeat any part of it, let me know.
So the really good news, Jill, is that as a result of a grant that was applied for some time ago, we will now have school social workers in every building starting next year. So the last 22 were recently approved, and we're in the process of getting those job descriptions board approved. We'll post and hopefully hire 22. So if you know any social workers who are interested in coming to work for a premier educational school system, we're the place to be. And that is going to be a critical part of our recovery plan. Those social workers, we've got 2 or 3 years of guaranteed funding, and they will be front and center in supporting the transitional work related to the SEL needs in our buildings. I believe many of our buildings already have informal committees like the one that you referenced in terms of utilizing their site councils that way. And so I would expect that to continue and perhaps be expanded. There's a key awareness across the district of the social emotional needs of our students and being very intentional about how we put supports in place to meet the needs of our students.
Incredible. I think everyone here would agree that that's really good news for our students. Let's see. Is it possible for Scottsdale Unified School District to reinstate sister schools? More importantly, sister PTA or PTOs, either intra-learning complex or across learning complexes. Moving forward, linkages between schools instead of rivalries, except on the court or field, will be critical. Why reinvent the wheel in one place when another is already doing an exceptional job implementing a particular goal or initiative?
So when you use the word, whoever asked the question, reinstate, it implies that there had been sister schools in the past. So that's something that I need to learn more about. I think the idea of partnering with schools across learning complexes makes a lot of sense. We absolutely want to learn from each other. We want to replicate best practices. And so I think that that's definitely a possibility. I believe that we have exceptional practice happening throughout the school district that should be elevated and duplicated. And sister school concept is one of many ways that we might be able to capture some of those ideas.
Okay. I missed 2 questions.
Yep.
Going back to the social workers and the SEL, will those social workers be full-time? Do you know?
Yes, they'll be full-time social workers.
Okay. And then is there going to be a volunteer hub on the SUSD website, as Dr. Guerin mentioned in the last board meeting?
Dr. Guerin is shaking her head yes, but I'll let her speak to that more specifically.
So it's already there. So if you go to the SUSD website and click about, you'll find a place for committees, committee hub. And there's already several on there, and we're going to be adding more, particularly some opportunities to get involved in the ESSER funding and the approval of innovative programmings and how to support students. So that's going to get started this summer, and we're really excited about that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Dr. Guerin.
I'm not sure if you're reading the chat, but there is a question in there. Why is Ingleside still being scheduled differently than all the other middle schools after the departure of the principal who implemented it solely at Ingleside without any parent input? Has the district looked at the research on impact of such long class periods? Many parents would like to have the standard schedule reinstated at Ingleside to allow for students to have regular length classes and equitable elective minutes and variety of electives during their middle school years as the other middle school in the district.
So I'm not reading the chat, so thank you for reading the question. And I'm happy to talk about Ingleside, where we are and where we're likely heading. And then I'm likely to see if Dr. Sackos's mute function works or doesn't work. But I'm gonna start the conversation and cover as much as I can. So I want to be clear. The Ingleside schedule change happened a few years ago. It was done without full participation and input from parents. And there have been a group of parents that have expressed their frustration and exasperation over that change for some period of time. One of the things that I did when I got here was to spend a little time trying to understand the rationale behind the move. And there was a team from Ingleside that visited Chandler, where they have 5 period days in the middle school. So I want to start by saying that it's not an unheard of concept that was just unilaterally imposed. There was some research that was done. It wasn't imposed in a way or developed in a way that was fully inclusive of the learning community, which is a concern for me. So as we were looking at what the next step should be, I had people emailing and contacting me and actually going to the governing board saying, you need to change this now, just make it go back to 6 periods. Well, that's a reasonable thought, but I fundamentally believe that process matters and that engaging the community in that conversation, this is the 3rd year that they've been on the 5 period day. I think that if I did something unilaterally, like was done to move to the 5 period day, without engaging the broader community of stakeholders, both our staff that work in the building and our parents, that would be a mistake. There are important arguments to be made with respect to what is lost when you move to the 5 period day. And that in particular relates to the number of electives and the amount of time students have in electives. There are questions that we've been working to answer in terms of what's the academic impact. Do we see students better prepared for high school when they leave Ingleside as a result of the change? So for example, and I don't know the answer to this, but if the data was that the freshman failure rate dropped by 50%, it might be a significant number to look at, because we know that freshman failure rate is an indicator, if you fail 2 or more classes, of your likelihood to graduate. So I think spending the time engaging in the broad conversation, making sure we have all the data before making a decision about moving from the 5 period day to the 6 period is time well spent. And it sends a message that at Scottsdale Unified School District, at least while I'm here, we're going to engage in conversation with our stakeholders, internal and external, before we make a big decision like this. We still have the potential to be able to change that schedule for next year. The task force that we've convened to have the conversation had their first meeting yesterday, and we're looking at all of the data before making a final recommendation. But I think process is important, and I understand that some people are frustrated because they've been talking about this for multiple years. But I've been here for 1 year, and most of the time during this first year has been responding to the pandemic. So our goal is to be able to make a thoughtful decision that centers what's in the best interest of our students, having had conversations with all of the key stakeholders. Does that answer the question?
I mean, I think so. I would hope whoever asked it, if they have any further follow-up, please, feel free to put it in the chat. Lastly,
there was one at the top that I think you didn't see, Jill.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Maybe we're not yet. Is SUSD still using AVID? AVID? If so, which schools?
So there are four schools, but 3 buildings that are AVID schools: Copper Ridge, K8, Tonalea, K8, Hohokam, and Yavapai. And so, yes, we still have AVID. It will be on the board agenda for the 18th to extend for another year. But the district does have that in place, and those districts have expressed, or those buildings have expressed an interest in continuing.
Lastly, you mentioned that much of your year has been consumed with COVID and all of the planning, and so there hasn't been a whole lot of pressure in the regards of equity, but the DEI committee from SPC would just like to know what SUSD's commitment to equity is going to be in the next year and into the future.
So I appreciate that question, Jill. And even in the COVID response, I would argue that we've kept at the forefront our commitment to equity, inclusion, and diversity. But being clear on how we define those terms, I think, is important, because there are a lot of ways in which language gets appropriated or misappropriated. And so the difference between equity and equality, for example, I think it's important for people to understand that equity means giving each student the supports they need to be successful. Access and opportunity is critical. And in a COVID environment, different students have different needs. Part of our commitment to equity in a COVID response was to provide for both in-person learning opportunities and online learning opportunities. As a district, we're committed to creating inclusive educational environments where each and every student feels welcome, a sense of belonging, supported for who they are when they walk through the door. It doesn't matter the color of skin, socioeconomic status, gender identity. All of those variables don't change how we approach the support for our students in the learning environment. And that's our commitment. What it means as we go forward is being very intentional in creating that sense of belonging, ensuring the dignity of each student in our school system and each staff member. And equity, as I said, is really about making sure that each student has the supports necessary to be successful. And so from that perspective, we've been doing some of it. The question is, how do we elevate the conversation in ways that people understand? I often use the example, I have a daughter, my oldest, who has rheumatoid arthritis, has had it since she was in the 4th grade. That's an invisible disability. Oftentimes people can't see how it's impacted her. We knew how it impacted her as her parents, but as she moved through the educational system, it required some accommodations, doing some things differently. It actually required as parents that we gave her some differential supports than we gave her sister. So when we think about equity and inclusion and diversity, it also includes our students with disabilities. How do we ensure that they are welcomed in the learning environment, that whether their disability is visible or invisible, whether it's a cognitive impairment or physical or some combination, that they each know that they're valued and supported in the learning process. That's all a part of our commitment. It's been present here and will continue in the upcoming years.
Thank you. We did have one last comment from a parent that they would hope that SUSD is going to continue to communicate volunteer opportunities directly to parents to make sure that the entire community is invited. And one more, are there any plans to give teachers and staff training on these diversity variables that you just mentioned within the learning environment?
So part of I think that's a really good question. Part of our plan is to really assess the landscape, to identify what do our teachers know and what don't they know, and how do we provide proper professional development and support. And so that's an ongoing conversation. I've been a part of a former school district where we had a robust training opportunities for teachers in this area. And I think one of the things that we're focusing on is how do we do that and do it in a way that supports the teachers and is meaningful over time, not just a one shot, quickly you check the box, you did it and you're done. But how do we really support teachers in meeting the needs of all their students? And that's true also then for how we support administrators in meeting the needs of all their students. It's every person in the school system understanding that together we create the kind of environment that is rich and nurturing and positive for everyone who attends our schools.
Can you share with us who the compliance officer for SUSD is with regards to discrimination?
So for Title IX, Dr. Melissa Sackos is the current compliance officer.
Okay.
see how excited she is about that.
Thank you, Dr. Sackos. And, you know, while we give parents like another minute to get their questions in, or I don't know, 10 seconds, however long it takes me to say thank you, Dr. Menzel, on behalf of SPC for getting us through this year. I believe that your support was invaluable. We were very lucky to have you at the head of the ship, and we're really looking forward to seeing what else we can do in the future with you as our leader. Yeah, and looks like you're getting lots of thanks in the comments as well. So
well, I want to thank you, Jill. I want to thank the SPC and all of our parents. It's not been easy for anyone. I mean, this has been one of the most trying years on any number of levels. And the only way we get through challenges like this is by doing it together. And I think all things considered, we've done pretty well. And I do believe that Scottsdale Unified School District will emerge stronger on the other side of COVID, and that we're going to be able to grow our student enrollment. We're going to continue to create compelling educational opportunities for all of our students, and that we will be that destination district that people talk about and can come to visit in order to see how to meet the needs of every student successfully as they move through a school system.
Thank you. Thanks for always being here. So I don't see any more questions. So I guess we'll, and someone says, I hope you can enjoy the shores of Lake Michigan this summer.
If only. I have a wedding on the Pacific Ocean, so I'm going to call that good enough. And
yeah,
my oldest is getting married, so it'll have to do. Next year, I'll get back to Lake Michigan.
There you go. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to you, Emmy, and thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. Let me remove these. There we go. Okay, so with that, we will welcome Dr. Kim Guerin, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and she's here to talk to us tonight about opportunities to engage our kids over the summer academically and just keep them active and avoid this summer slump, as we say. Welcome, Kim Guerin.
Thank you, Emmy. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. So thank you for having me. And I really miss our meetings in person. I can't wait. I'm optimistic for next year that we'll all get to be in the same room again, but thank you for having me. So I'm going to share my screen. And of course, feel free to take notes, but please know that I'm going to be passing this slideshow on to the leaders, and there's clickable links throughout it. So anything I've referenced, I've put a link so you can check it out, that opportunity. All right, so let me find my presentation. All right, thumbs up if you can see that. Okay, great. So this evening, I'm going to present Scottsdale Unified School District Summer Learning Opportunities. We've talked in the past about avoiding the summer slide, how to keep kids really engaged with academics and enrichment. And this has come to the forefront even more because of COVID. So tonight I'm going to talk about some different opportunities. First, about district-based opportunities and programs that we're offering. There's the tried and true site-specific programs, and there's also some new site programs out there. There are community programs available in the city of Scottsdale that I think are really high quality. And then I'm also going to provide some just engaging family activities, because it is so much fun when you learn at home with your entire family and all age groups. So the first thing I want to talk about, and I did reach out to the teaching and learning coaches for a lot of this information, and they wanted me to remind all parents, including myself, that our students' summer needs to be a balance. We don't want it just to be working on worksheets, drilling some of those skills. We have to have a balance of academics and fun. And our kids have all been through some trauma with COVID. Things have changed. Their lives have changed in one way or another. Their normal was different. And of course, that varies greatly by each student and by each family. But when we talk about academics, the research recommends academic work in just 10, 15, 30-minute chunks of working on reading fluency, practicing math problem solving, that it is not lengthy sessions, but we need to make them as meaningful as possible and integrated with things that are fun and engaging. So if you can find enrichment activities that include this academic work, it's when kids are learning and they don't even know they're learning, when they're really engaged in problem solving, project-based activities, that's when some of the magic happens. And research shows that that is more impactful than just practice with one skill. We have embedded social emotional supports in so much of our programming in SUSD this summer, and you just heard the great news about the social workers. We know that this is an area of focus for us. We want our kids to have fun. We want them to have social opportunities and really get back to the things that make school and learning special, which is engagement with others. We do understand that this past year has been so challenging. When we talk about the summer slide, that was compacted with our national learning gap. Now, we were really lucky to provide different opportunities for learning in SUSD. We worked so hard to have in-person choices for as much of the year as possible, at-home choices as well for families that needed it. But we know nationally and even throughout the world that there were learning loss. We understand that 55 million students in the United States was impacted by COVID and school closures and learning at home instead of in person, and just different from the normal. Based on research, as educators, we're trying to think, how do we know how much students' learning lost? How was their learning impacted? And many researchers are relying on past studies with Summer Slide just to get an idea. And we understand that sometimes students that experience learning loss in the summer will come back with just 70% of the skills in ELA and 50% in math. Now, we're not seeing that at SUSD data, but that's just a little, some national statistics on Summer Slide. Each kid is different. So you need to know, as a parent, we'll work hand in hand with you to focus on areas that might need some fine tuning or just some focus. We're also really honing in on high school students that either didn't complete a class or possibly failed a class. We know statistics on this throughout the United States are really tough right now. We are working hand in hand with parents and counselors and assistant principals and principals on contacting high school families to make sure we reach out and say, your student has an incomplete, they just missed this one section of the class. How can we help them turn that incomplete into a letter grade? So that individual conversation and intervention is our goal for all families. So I'm going to talk about just some of our district targeted program. And what we've done with district targeted programming is looking at our current data and our students and what they need. So this isn't programming for every single student. It's for students that we're seeing teachers are recommending that the student is struggling, had some learning loss, or needs some specific intervention. So every year we have summer programming for English language learners, and that will continue, and that's at Echo Canyon. We're focusing on gifted students in the Title I schools. We have a program that was new last year called Beyond Move On When Reading, and Margaret Cerna leads that program, and that's providing reading specialists and reading interventions specific to students' learning need. We're very excited about the expansion of that program this summer. We always have special education extended school year for students who qualify. One of our most innovative, exciting opportunities that we're doing this year, working with Dr. Sackos and her team, and we're recruiting National Honor Society and other high achieving students and hiring them as student intern tutors. Our goal is to have them at all 5 high school sites, and they would be available virtually in the morning and in person in the afternoon. And you can sign up to get some help. So if you're in a summer school class and you're falling behind or you're struggling with a concept, that peer-to-peer support sometimes is the most successful. So we are in the process of hiring right now. It is posted where you go for our job listings, so spread the word. High school summer school is going to look a bit different this year. we just charged a small application fee, and we can absolutely waive that as needed. And there's no tuition charge for summer school. We've also hired someone to oversee all the academic intervention, more counselors, more social workers, more support and intervention for students that are trying to recover some incompletes or change their grade. We have in-person and virtual, and that is enrolling right now. So make sure you sign up if you're interested. We also noticed that, and this is not just specific to COVID, that when you look at the data, many middle school students struggle in the area of mathematics, and trying to learn online did compound that issue. So we've had Summer Bridge focused on mathematics before, but we've expanded the program. We've had really good reviews from teachers and students, so we wanted to just expand what was working. We're offering it to incoming 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, and incoming 9th graders at different sites, different sessions, some virtual, some in person. So this is a very specific targeted approach for students who need support in math. We have Summer Boost at 2 sites. This is in addition to all the site-specific programming. And when we looked at the data for elementary students, the greatest need was in the area of English language arts. This Summer Boost program, which is going to be at Yavapai and Redfield, is for students that are identified by their teachers and by our FastBridge data as needing additional support. It's also covering problem solving in mathematics, and instead of special areas, they'll have social emotional learning support. So we're going through inviting and families that can't attend. We're taking the next student on the list and capturing as many families as possible. And we've added transportation to that program. So some of this is what worked before, and we're scaling it or adding more support and services. And we have two teacher leaders planning that programming right now. We have Title I band camp happening at Ingleside, and Coronado has developed their own boot camp for freshmen. There are site-specific programs. Some of these have been there before, some are new. These are led by principals and teachers at the site based on site need. We have math and reading at Desert Canyon. 21st Century Learning has some opportunities for summer. We received some additional grant money for those programs. Tavon is having a Summer Intervention Institute. So those are just some of the things. So you can reach out to your site to find out what summer programming is available. You can always email me if this is a lot of information and your child has a specific need. I will either speak with you myself or get the best instructional coach to work with you on how we can meet the needs, because recovery is about meeting individual student needs, not one size fits all. So I'm happy to have a conversation with any parent about what would be the best pathway for your child or young adult. Kids Club is open to all students at the elementary level, and we have 2 sites this year. What we've done at Kids Club to enhance it is add some academic support. So it's a fun, it's camp, it's all that socialization that we've come to expect, but we're also adding academic support in response to COVID to Kids Club. You can find this on the Community Ed website. So then I just want to share some summer community programming, but maybe I should stop to see if there's any questions on the district SUSD programming. All right, I'm just going to keep going. Stop me if you need me to. All right, so our public libraries have offered summer reading programs forever. I grew up in Phoenix, and I remember going to the Mesquite branch by the PV Mall to get my prize. I've always loved to read. This year it's called Tales and Tales from the Scottsdale Public Library. You can log your minutes online, get prizes. As a former classroom teacher, sometimes just this bit of structure helps a family stay on task. If you are only going to do one thing this summer, no matter if you have a kindergartner all the way to a high school student, if you can engage in some reading several times a week, if not every day, even if it's just 15-minute chunks. If you have an older child, pick a book together and do your own little book club. There's different ways to stay engaged, but research shows that this is such an important thing to do. And if we can create a love of learning outside of, I have to read this book for this English class, that's going to really help your student move forward into the future. So find something they're interested in. It could be anything. And I've always loved this program. The Science Center is continuing their Camp Innovation. And what's different this year is they're offering Camp Innovation in person and virtual. When I went out and looked for some community programs, I wanted to see some that offered choice for families. Some families are ready for in-person and some families still would like things to be virtual. So this offers both, and there's different programs, and this is high quality STEAM and STEM programming. You really can't go wrong with the Arizona Science Center. And I really think this would be fun for any family. I would suggest sitting down with your kids any age and creating a little family passport. Where have you wanted to visit? Have you wanted to go to Egypt to visit the pyramids? Have you wanted to check out all the museums in Washington, D.C.? Make a passport and all of you go online and find all the virtual tours that you can. And maybe send them out to look for ideas to bring back for the family to see who's interested. You can create some fun opportunities at home. And with technology now, you can really experience so much of this, because clearly we are not getting on a plane and going to Europe this summer. So not that I've ever done that anyway. I usually just go to San Diego, but there are so many virtual field trips for students. So I have collected a link, attached a link that there's a ton of them out there that you might want to explore. I encourage that. All right, to wrap up, I asked Michelle Irvin, our fine arts director, I asked all the coaches and athletics what they might recommend. So there's a bunch of links here. City of Scottsdale has some great opportunities as well. So of course, I want to promote our SUSD programming, whether it is district sponsored, site sponsored, community education specific to a certain group of students and their needs. But also we live in the wonderful city of Scottsdale, and there is so much out there for families. So remember to have fun, remember to stay engaged as we slowly take each step at a time back to our new normal. And please don't hesitate to email me or give me a call if you'd like some advice on that. I'm ready to take any questions. I'm going to stop sharing.
There was a couple things in the chat. One said, what about learning gains? There are tremendous learning gains this year: independence, interdependence, media literacy, technology, social connectedness, modulation, etc.
I am a glass half full person, and there are certainly things that came out of the pandemic that is going to move teaching and learning forward. There are some tools and innovations that we will continue to use in the practice of teaching. Yes, so it isn't all about loss, but there certainly are some concerns for students. The other, even if it's not learning loss, there is the social aspect of school looking different, requirements from trying to stay apart. So also focusing on social, emotional, having fun, getting back to the activities that make students excited about learning.
And there was one question, but I think you mostly addressed it. It said, are there any collaborations with the libraries or boys and girls clubs over the summer for informal opportunities?
So yes, and some schools are closer to boys and girls clubs than others. I would absolutely just go to those websites. They partner with specific schools, but they're also open to the whole SUSD community. Community education can also help you reach out to them if you need assistance.
Great. Did anyone else have any questions for Dr. Guerin? Takers. All right, tomorrow I will be sending out an email to our full email list, and so it'll include her presentation that she gave so that you'll have all those accessible. And I just wanted to also thank all of the SPC representatives for serving this year. It was a tough year, and I appreciate everyone's consistent attendance and engagement throughout the year. Next year in August, that's when we have SPC reps are assigned for the schools. So if you would like to do it again next year or have someone you would like to refer, then reach out to your principal. That's who is the person to assign the SPC representatives. And all right, so and with that, I think we will call the meeting to a close. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good summer. I hope that it's restful and fun and interactive with humans in real life. So thank you.